Hi guys, so I am going to play catch up with my reading wrap up starting from June. Obviously if you've watched my sort of like comeback video, I guess, if you're interested I will link that in the cards, but it explains kind of why my reading game has been a little bit squiffy of late. So yeah, I haven't been reading as much, so I just hadn't had the desire or didn't think it made sense to just be showing like one book that I read when it was like a whole month of just reading, you know. Don't know if that made any sense, but yeah, so we're kicking it back to June where I read 2 books. So one of them is something that I've got a whole video on actually, that was kind of like the last of my more consistent videos, and that is A Quart of Mr Fury by Sarah J Maas. I have a reading vlog, as I just mentioned. If you do want to watch that, I will link that for you as well. So this is actually the sequel to A Quart of A Quart of Thorns and Roses, which I actually really disliked. So I thought it would be a fun challenge to kind of go back to this series and read it, because Sarah J Maas, so far from what I've read from her Throne of Glass series, is an author that I really do like. I just didn't like that first book of the newer series, so I wanted to kind of see if my thoughts changed, if I preferred it once development and stuff came about in the sequel. And if you want to know my thoughts on that, go ahead and check out that reading vlog. Following that, I read this, which is BBC Doctor Who's The Woman Who Lived, Amazing Tales for Future Time Lords by Christelle D and Simon Guerrera. This one I gave a 4 stars. It's basically a collection of, I don't want to say short stories, but like sort of short stories about inspirational women that were in Doctor Who, whether they're fictional, whether they're based on real life characters. For example, some of the real ones, if I can even figure it out. Well, you know when they do their like educational episodes, and they went back to like ancient Egypt and stuff like that. Well, it's got all these characters in, and it talks a little bit about their story in the timeline of Doctor Who. Sometimes if they were just in like one-off episodes or a few episodes, it sort of tells you kind of what happens. So yeah, I'd say, just quickly going on to this, a bad point for that is if you haven't seen that specific episode about that character, then it will spoil you for that, because it pretty much gives you away how it all ended and stuff like that. So probably you should know or have an interest in Doctor Who, obviously, but should have watched at least the majority of them, so it's not that bad of an issue if you get spoiled on some of the ones maybe you're not interested in. I don't know. So there's that. But out of the good things, I'd say it is very inspiring. I feel like this would definitely give a child some excitement, some inspiration to be an amazing person, because I feel like Doctor Who is just one of those shows that everyone sort of loves. I don't know, that maybe they have loved in the past or they do now. I just feel like it's one of those wholesome family shows that explore a lot of different things in their storyline, and I feel like inspiration is definitely one of the themes that I noticed in a lot of the episodes, you know, regardless of what season it was. It was nice to have a little refresher of characters I've known. So I started with the Eccleston era, but I have seen some of the older episodes as well, like just random little snippets of some. But it was, again, from that to now, it was nice remembering some of the characters I maybe forgot and seeing some more about ones that I did love, and just having it all in one place. And it gave me like an intro or a more of a better knowledge of the characters that I didn't know as well. So yeah, I really did enjoy this one. That was a 4 stars. So those are the 2 books that I read for June. We're going into July now. I actually managed to read a fair bit more in July, which I'm happy about. It was a nice kind of escape of things that were happening in real life. So yeah, I actually wanted to take part in the Yearathon for that month, which was from the 1st to the 7th of July, and it was kind of read 5 different kind of books. So the ones that I chose, like the prompts that I chose, was read a picture book, read a paperback book, read a hardcover, read a self-bought book, and read an e-book. But you could read any sort of book in those sort of categories. It was very wide open interpretation. So the first book I read was the official read that wrong. The Magical Unicorn Society Official Handbook by, who is it, by Selwyn E. Phillips et al. So it's just a collection. I don't know if Selwyn E. Phillips is actually a real person or like a made up name for this, because it is written as if everything like this is real. It's like a handbook guide, and you know what, it's absolutely adorable. So this was my picture book choice for the year-a-thon. So I gave this a 5 stars. I feel like it's woven absolutely beautifully and it feels real, like the way, like it's sort of broken up into different classes of unicorns, and the way it gives you their history and background just feels really real. I feel like the illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. I would absolutely love framed artwork from this book. I think it's that stunning. Let me show you some. So we've got things like this page. It's a really stunning collection, to be fair. What other ones? Oh, this page. See if there's any at the front I want to show you. And this awesome map, which was stunning, absolutely stunning. And overall, like, it was very enchanting for all unicorn lovers, whether you're a younger person or an older person. I adore unicorns and all things magical like that, so this was something that I was really excited to see. I think I got it from The Works, if I remember correctly. But yes, so there's that. I have no bad sort of cons for this at all. I really thoroughly enjoyed this. Then I read The Little Red Hen Makes a Pizza by Philman Sturges and Amy Warwood. So I actually read this whilst I was at work. So this was at the work before I got my new job, and it was like educational teaching about school farms. So depending on what the activity was, in terms of, like, you'd manipulate what you were cooking and what you were doing in the classroom, and one of them was making pizzas. So they read the story of the little hen that makes a pizza, and I gave this a 4 stars. Actually, I'd never read that one before. I don't think I've read the original Little Red Hen either. I thought I'd mention it in my little wrap up just because, like, it's something new to me and I wanted to read it, and it was interesting. So I think it was great cooking and teaching. Again, it was very educational, which was obviously the purpose of why we were reading it to the class. It also teaches good morals as well, for example sharing. The Little Red Hen, if you've read it, or if you perhaps you've got children or younger siblings or whatever, she obviously goes through making this pizza on her own because everybody sort of has their own things going on. They're not as insistent on helping her, but when it comes to eating the pizza, she's quite kind about sharing, which is nice. And the children as well at that particular time when we were doing the story were very engaged, so yeah, they were reading along and kind of asking questions and remembering things as well, which was very helpful when it actually came to cooking the pizza. So after that, I finished How to Be Human, the manual, with a neuroscientist and a monk by Ruby Wax. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So what this is about is basically just kind of a conversation, self-help sort of book about being a human and kind of everything that goes with it, like the emotions and stuff like that, and how to deal with life. I'll just read to the back because it might be a bit more informative. So we should be the happiest species alive, but most of us aren't. What's gone wrong? By treating ourselves more like machines and less like humans, always chasing what's better, we've forgotten the 4 billion years of evolution that makes us human. I wrote this book with a little help from a monk who explains how the mind works, and a neuroscientist who explains what makes us in the brain. We answer every question you've ever had about evolution, thoughts, emotions, the body, addictions, relationships, kids, the future, and compassion. How to Be Human is the only manual you'll need to help you upgrade your mind. So yeah, as I said, I gave this a 3.5 stars. I felt like it had some really good mindfulness tips, and at the moment that I was reading, it was kind of helpful. Like, it mirrored what I kind of needed a little bit of, how to be more at peace with my mind. It had some great topics of discussion just in general. I'd say early on I noticed it had a really odd way of talking about religion. Now, I don't know if Ruby Wax has, I don't know her in and out background story. I didn't even realise, like, I recognised the name when I got it, but I didn't realise who it was before, but I am familiar with her, I think, as like a comedian. But it feels like she's got a very what's the word, a general dislike of religion, and I feel like the way she talks about it comes across that way. Again, I'm not accusing anything, it felt kind of negatively shone, and the jokes that were made were like, ooh, that's a little bit taboo, I suppose. I did skim read some parts, for example, like the chapter about kids just wasn't interesting to me. I didn't have any relevance to that chapter, so I just flew through that bit. But overall it was enjoyable. Got some good information out of this as well. I forgot to say, the How to Be Human was my book for paperback, which was for the year-a-thon. This next one now, The Witch's Journal, Charm Spells, Potions and Enchantments by Celine Silverwind, was my hardcover choice. And this one says, need help to find new love, get cranky boss to lighten up, release stress, or simply find a parking space. The Witch's Journal is full of charms, spells, potions and enchantments to help you. Based on Wiccan philosophy, this practical guide to magic uses familiar ingredients and everyday objects and spellcraft that is easy to understand and simple to use. Perfect for the apprentice spellcaster. This journal is complete introduction to magic. Dip in and dip out, learning as you go. So I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars also. I will say it's like a great beginner book of shadows if you are interested in that sort of thing. It goes over a lot of interesting topics. For example, you've got stuff about planetary alignments, you've got deities, like all these different kind of culture deities, candle magic, colour magic, like loads of different things. And again, it's very aesthetically pleasing, so it's kind of written out in sort of a journal notepad style, which makes it easy to read, familiar, friendly, helpful overall. But I will say it does go on quite a bit about deities. For example, me and my practice, if you want to call it that, I don't believe in like deity magic or anything like that. I don't put my faith or belief in anything to do with like a person or some sort of godly being. I don't. So for me that felt lengthy and unnecessary because there was a lot about it, but for others that are interested in deities and things like that, probably would have been great. And I feel like we needed an ending statement or like a closing sort of comment, because it just kind of, that was it, just kind of ended. But yeah, I mean, it's not a storybook or anything like that, but it just felt a little bit abrupt of, okay, the end, you know. But yeah, interesting. I'm glad to have this in my collection. And the last book that I read for July was The Pets at Primrose Cottage, Part 1, A Place to Hide by Sheila Norton. I've been meaning to start this serialisation of novel for ages. This is one of my NetGalley reads, so my face probably screwed up then. Of course, all opinions are my own. So I gave this one a 3 stars. The Pets at Primrose Cottage follows our main character called Emma. I will be talking about this a little bit more because I finished some more of the other books in August, but it follows our main character Emma, who basically comes into this little village, I think it's called Crickleford, and she's trying to escape something sort of devastating, dramatic that happened when she was living in New York with her boyfriend. She's trying to escape. All we kind of know at the beginning is she's trying to get away from journalists, and she can't stay with her parents because they've sort of found her there and they're flocking, so she's moved to this quiet little country village to escape all of that. But because of that, she has sort of built a new life for herself, and she's not being very truthful to those who are around her. So as I say, 3 stars for that. I felt like it was the perfect quaint escape, both literally and metaphorically. Reading the story and the town and where she lived sounded very perfect, but also it's kind of, again, what I needed at that point. It was a very easy read, which I do enjoy from Sheila Norton's books. I've read The Vets at Hope Green, something, I don't know, and I really enjoyed that, so that's why I was excited to finally get to this one. And I loved the pet sitting aspect as well, which takes hold of our story quite a lot, quite early on. I will say I disliked this particular trope, which was a misunderstanding, but in this case it was like actively lying. I just can't stand that sort of plot. Like, it really bothers me, it annoys me, and I just don't like lying in general. I felt the diversity did feel a little bit forced, but I appreciate it being attempted because I feel like our author listened to our reviews. I believe, no, don't get me wrong if I have misunderstood, but I think I remember when I reviewed each individual one of her previous series with the vets, I mentioned there was a lack of diversity, and she had seen my review and she liked my review or whatever, and I feel like maybe she took that critique on board. I don't know if it probably wouldn't have been just me. I'm sure she's got other reviews and things, people might have said something similar. So I do appreciate the effort, but it did still feel forced, that maybe that's something she could work on. And I will say there was some poor use of words for mental health. I should have written down an example, but I was probably worried of causing offence. So yeah, there's that, and those were the books that I read for July. So just taking it back to June very, very quickly, I just wanted to mention the kind of reading breakdown that I been trying to do with the last wrap-ups. So I read 0 library loans, 0 friend family loans, 2 physical books, 0 Kindles, 0 magazines, and overall I read 2 books. Then for July I read 0 library loans, 4 physical books, 0 magazines, 0 friends and family loans, 1 Kindle book, and overall I read 5 books. So now we're going into August, and I read, I think I read 4 books that month. So a little bit less than the previous month, but still quite good progress. So the first book I finished was The Midnight Queen by Sylvia Hunter. Now again, I've got a video where I talk a lot about this, so I will tell you about that in a short while. Sorry, I was stumbling over my words because the door just went, but yeah, it was just a delivery for another cat product. But anyway, yeah, as I was saying, I've got a video talking about this. It's my Instagram Chooses My TBR wrap up. This is one of the books that I talk about in there, so check that out if you're interested. Then I continued on with the Peace&Cookies Primrose Cottage. This was part 2, New Beginnings, again by Sheila Norton. Gave this a 4 stars. I started to feel very warm towards Emma, like not warm towards her, I was warming to her. I felt like I was enjoying her a little bit more as a character, despite her flaws. It was definitely, again, it continued that very quaint, soft read kind of vibe that I was getting from it. It also had a very interesting outside look of relationships and specifically marriage issues, so that was an interesting topic to put in there as well. I loved hearing about Emma's growing business. Again, if you are interested in learning more about that, definitely check out those books, just because I don't want to go too much into depth about it. But again, I couldn't stand the lies, so that's the only other thing that really bothered me. And then I finished this one, which I was excited to get to. This is A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. So again, I'll read the back for you on this one. It says, 3 sisters trapped by an ancient curse, 3 magical objects with the power to change their fate. Will they be enough to break the curse, or will they lead the sisters even deeper into danger? It's a middle grade read and it was very enjoyable. I gave this a 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. So I loved the sisterly theme that we had in this. Most of it was happening in a day, which I thought was very well done actually. I feel like sometimes those sort of plot lines can be quite rushed and you don't get a lot of answers, but with this one in particular I felt like it was fleshed out well enough, and it felt very well tied together. I adored learning about Saoirse's story, and the plot surrounding the curse and how the sisters were all involved in this and how it began and everything. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I will say the time travel lore always makes me, well, it makes my mind hurt when I think about it too much, because I always think about the what ifs and loopholes and stuff like that. But this story was kind of, you know, just enjoy it for what it was, you know, don't try to think too much about it, you know. So yeah, really did adore this. As usual, I keep forgetting to mention, with the rest of my books and everything like that, if you are interested in full written reviews, check out my Goodreads link down in the description. And then the last book I read for August was part 3 of the Peace&Cookies Primrose Cottage. This was the Trust Your Heart. This time I gave it a 3 stars. I felt like the first kiss that we had in this book, obviously I won't tell you between who, because read it and find out. I thought that was absolutely beautiful, and there were some very funny moments with Emma, particularly with her family misunderstanding the line of work she did. That whole scene really made me laugh out loud. I do feel like there was a very triggering dynamic brought into here that fleshed out a bit more. You could see hints of it throughout the second part of the book, but I didn't think it was going to go this way, and I don't think it was really fleshed out enough or discussed, so I feel like we could have had a little bit more on that, or perhaps I've just left it out if it wasn't handled in the best way it could have been, I don't know. And I found lastly that the actual plot twist of the background wasn't as interesting as I was hoping it to be. I thought it was going to be this massive explosive thing, but it was a little bit underwhelming, I have to admit. So let me quickly tally up my reading breakdown and I'll be back in just a jiffy. So overall for August I read 0 library loans, 2 physical books, 0 magazines, 0 friends and family loans, 2 Kindle books, and overall I read 4 books. And just quickly to insert my current read, I am currently reading Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. It is kind of like an inspired IKEA haunting house story, but the shop in here isn't IKEA. They make reference to IKEA, so it's like its own, like it doesn't not exist, if that makes sense. But basically suspicious activity is happening in this Orsk shop. That's the name of this company of furniture shop, and the assistant or the store manager decides they need to have a couple of the members of staff do an overnight shift to see what's happening. It's like a parody and a horror, and yeah, I'm about halfway into it at the minute. It was just strange because I started reading this on the day of the night that I was going to have my night shift, and it didn't scare me, but I thought I should probably not be reading this in case it creeps me out, and lo and behold, I got a little bit creeped out on my night shift. But anyway, yeah, this is what I'm currently reading. And to wrap it all up, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you've been reading. Sorry, this was really jam-packed with like 3 months worth of reading, but I've been only doing like little bits, so I think it came together quite well, I think. Anyway, I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye.